The forest is quiet. Too quiet. Somewhere far away, a sound breaks the silence, not loud enough to identify, but close enough to make your heart stop. In moments like these, fear doesn't scream. It whispers. It slips into your thoughts, settles behind your eyes, and reminds you how small you are beneath the weight of the dark. It reminds you how fragile life can be, how quickly the familiar can turn hostile, and how thin the line truly is between safety and terror. Tonight, you are not just listening to stories. You are stepping into moments where real people felt their hearts race, their breaths shorten, and their instincts awaken. These are not tales invented to entertain. They are memories shaped by survival, by fear so intense it rewired the soul. Because within every true horror story lies a lesson carved by pain, endurance, and the will to keep going when everything inside you is begging you to stop. These are two terrifying true horror stories, but they are also mirrors reflecting the parts of ourselves we rarely acknowledge. They remind us that courage often appears only when escape feels impossible, that resilience is born in darkness, and that fear, when faced instead of ignored, can transform us forever. The first lesson fear teaches us is awareness, because the body often senses danger long before the mind accepts it. Fear is not weakness, it is an ancient language, spoken through tightening chests, restless thoughts, and a sudden urge to look over your shoulder. Too many people silence it, embarrassed by the thought of overreacting. But in true horror stories, survival often begins the moment someone listens. One true account comes from a man driving alone through a remote stretch of highway just after midnight. The road was empty, the kind of empty that makes your headlights feel like they're cutting through nothingness itself. In his rearview mirror, a single pair of headlights appeared. At first, he paid no attention. Then he slowed down slightly, and the car slowed with him. He changed lanes. The car followed. His palms grew slick against the steering wheel. His heart began to beat harder, not faster, just heavier, as if each thump carried weight. Every rational explanation felt thin. He told himself he was tired, that fear was playing tricks on him, but his body refused to relax. When the car's headlights suddenly flicked off and on, plunging the road behind him into darkness and then light again, something inside him snapped awake. Instead of continuing into an isolated mountain pass, he turned abruptly toward a closed gas station he remembered passing miles back. He parked under a dying fluorescent light, engine running, doors locked. The car behind him slowed, paused at the edge of the lot, and then disappeared into the black. Days later, news broke of violent roadside attacks in that same area. Victims had ignored the feeling he listened to. Awareness saved him, not strength or speed, but the courage to trust the quiet voice of fear. Fear also teaches us how isolation can bend reality, turning the mind into both protector and enemy. In one documented case from the frozen north of Canada, a man accepted a job maintaining a remote research outpost through winter. Months of darkness pressed against the windows, and silence became so complete it rang in his ears. At first, the loneliness was manageable. Then, the sounds began, footsteps crunching outside during blizzards, slow and deliberate, circling the cabin. Every time he looked, there was nothing. No tracks, no movement, just endless snow. Sleep became fragmented. Shadows stretched longer than they should. His thoughts began to turn inward, looping, feeding on themselves. He felt watched even when the doors were bolted. Instead of surrendering to panic, he anchored himself to routine. He spoke aloud, even when alone, just to hear a human voice. He checked radios, wrote logs, kept lights on through the night. The fear never vanished, but it became manageable. When he was finally relieved, months later, doctors told him he had been dangerously close to psychological collapse. His survival was not about fighting something outside the cabin. It was about recognizing how isolation can distort perception and choosing grounding over fear. Another lesson horror teaches is that courage is rarely loud or dramatic. Most of the time, it looks like staying when every instinct tells you to run. A true story from a hospital night shift tells of a nurse assigned to a nearly empty wing. The building hummed with mechanical life, lights buzzing softly, corridors stretching long and hollow. One patient repeatedly whispered her name when no one else was around. The voice was faint, strained, and impossible to locate. Cameras showed nothing unusual. Other staff brushed it off. But something about the way the patient's eyes followed her, wide with fear and trust, made her stay. Hour after hour, she fought the urge to leave the room, to escape the oppressive feeling that something was wrong. Just before dawn, the patient suffered a sudden complication that would have been fatal if she hadn't been there. Whether the whispers were a medical anomaly or something unexplainable didn't matter. What mattered was that fear did not drive her away. Quiet courage saved her life. Fear also teaches the importance of preparation, because panic kills faster than danger itself. One real wilderness survival case tells of a hiker who ignored storm warnings, confident in his experience. When the weather turned, the forest transformed into something alive and predatory. Wind screamed through the trees, branches cracked like bones. As night fell, strange sounds echoed from every direction, and the darkness felt thick enough to swallow him whole. Panic rose, sharp and suffocating. But training surfaced through the fear. He slowed his breathing, forced himself to think, built shelter, conserved energy. Rescue teams later said, most lost hikers don't die from exposure. They die from fear-driven decisions. His preparation gave fear a boundary, turning terror into discipline and discipline into survival. Another lesson is that hope can exist even when logic says it shouldn't. During a devastating natural disaster, a woman became trapped beneath collapsed concrete and twisted metal. Darkness pressed in on all sides. Dust filled her lungs. Time lost meaning. She reported hearing voices guiding her, urging her to crawl in a direction that felt impossible. Every movement sent pain through her body, yet she followed that unseen guidance. Hours later, she emerged into daylight through a narrow gap rescuers hadn't noticed. No one could explain how she knew where to go. Sometimes hope is not optimism. Sometimes it is the refusal of the human spirit to accept that the story ends there. Horror also reminds us that the past leaves echoes meant to protect us. In a small village with roots stretching back centuries, elders warned children never to go near an abandoned well. Stories spoke of voices calling from its depths, of people who vanished without a trace. Modern investigators dismissed it as superstition until records revealed repeated disappearances linked to toxic gases and unstable ground around the well. Fear preserved the community long enough for truth to catch up. Legends sometimes are lessons wrapped in myth. Another lesson horror reveals is that fear exposes who we truly are. During a documented home invasion, 2 residents reacted differently. One hid, frozen, barely breathing. The other stepped forward, heart pounding, and spoke calmly to the intruder. Not with threats, but with words, with humanity. Something in that unexpected response broke the moment. The intruder fled. Fear stripped away masks and revealed strength neither resident knew they possessed. Finally, horror teaches gratitude. Survivors often say that after facing death, ordinary life feels sacred. The warmth of sunlight, the sound of laughter, the simple rhythm of breathing becomes precious. Fear does not only threaten life, it sharpens our awareness of its value. It teaches us to hold loved ones closer, to pay attention, to live with intention instead of drifting through days unaware of how fragile they are. These 2 terrifying true horror stories, and the countless others like them, remind us that fear is not sent to destroy us. It arrives to awaken us. It tests our awareness, our courage, our ability to endure. When darkness presses in, and the world feels unsafe, there is still something unbreakable inside you. May you listen to your instincts without shame, stand firm when fear tries to push you away, and remember that even in the most horrifying moments, you are never as powerless as you feel. May you be guided, protected, and strengthened through every shadowed path, finding light not after the fear ends, but within it itself.